compliance regulations in locally and in general, internationally, they are getting tougher with a lot of punishments, and the regulations, they are becoming stricter and stricter. Recently, we have moved from the Federal Decree Law of 2018 to the regulation that was recently implemented for designated non-financial businesses and professionals. So overall, there is no legal entity that is not subject to AML laws. And if there are some, of course, those are the ones that are of minimal effort, and there is always the AML regulation, there is always a regulation for the entities to be compliant with the laws. From here, we will see the steps to perform an effective due diligence, depending on the risk rating of each entity. It depends if the companies they would like, they have to perform either in due diligence or an enhanced due diligence. From the steps, we have seen that we have 9 steps, and I will explain those in further detail, starting from the one that is to understand the compliance concerns. Of course, the regulations, they are increasing and they become stricter. The companies, they are now becoming globalized, and the risk is now higher than before. The exposure becomes higher, and the need to mitigate the risk exposure increases from time to time. Then about the corporate objectives, is very important that you internally decide and draft the policies, the procedures that your organization will follow. And to be compliant, it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, as well as financial investment. However, if you find the right solutions, if you automate the processes as much as possible, the time and the effort that is required, it will be minimized. Each organization's, the process of each organization's due diligence should be in line with their strategic, financial, regulatory, and reputational risks, and especially when operating with third parties in countries of high levels of risk, then the effort should be much higher. We have the risk and the importance of gathering the key information about our entities, being either companies or individuals. Some examples of the information that are usually required from the entities are the incorporation documents for companies, financial information when and if it's available, the structure, the shareholding structure, who is the shareholder, who is the beneficial owner, details of the shareholders, as well as details of their directors and other key personnel. And this is, of course, important because if you're dealing with legal companies in which high-risk individuals are involved, of course, the risk of the legal company itself becomes higher. Some examples of information that are usually required for individuals are ID documents, such as the passport copy or a copy of the national ID, to verify the source of wealth or the source of funds, some potential links to political parties, and this is where the screening against politically exposed persons is required, and some clean criminal records. And usually there are reports available, at least locally we can gather that reports from the police department, and I guess that this is available in other countries as well. Of course, once we collect the information, the next step is to screen our clients, our prospects against some high-risk categories, as Erin mentioned before, the global sanctions lists that are available, then the enforcement lists, if our entity is a politically exposed person or related to any politically exposed persons, if they have any adverse media against them. We have to screen our prospects against wanted individuals, that are again of high risk, and if they are involved in any money laundering or fraud cases. Of course, there are systems that are available for screening our prospects or clients against all those high-risk categories, and an example of that is the very well-known the work compliance tool that is provided by Infocredit Group. The next step, once we have the information, once we screen our prospects against the high-risk categories, is to conduct our risk assessment. And this is where we need to calculate the risk scoring, where we have to rate our clients if they are of high risk or low risk level. And of course, some factors that we have to consider is the country in which those entities are operating, the industry, the level of government involvement, the entity type, and some other internal factors such as the lack of knowledge. If our entities, they refuse to provide us with some information, if they refuse to provide us with the ultimate beneficial owner, or if they refuse to provide us with any other documents or information that we may require. Of course, every information that is submitted to us, we always need to ask ourselves and our colleagues if are those information valid, or have we collected that information and with blind eyes we have proceeded with the screening and the risk assessment and we have accepted the client? Of course not, because you always have to validate that information and to confirm and be sure that this information is true and valid. And to collect the data, some very generic phrase that to collect the data is one important part indeed, but to validate it is the key. Some validation processes for low-risk entities is to screen against the high-risk categories that we have seen before, included the sanctions list, the enforcement list, the adverse media, the PEP data. In terms of the financial information, of course, there are entities like Infocredit, which is our primary activity to provide financial information about companies, financial and credit information about companies globally, and to screen our clients against the wanted individuals, the adverse media, and those data that are available again via screening solutions like the work compliance tool. For the high-risk entities, of course, we do have to perform all this, plus some additional things to check are the associated entities, if there are any adverse media or negative media against that persons, and if there are any administrative fines or penalties against either the legal entity or the individual. Then we have to keep logs of what we do, and we have to keep a full audit trail of our processes, and of course a comprehensive record to keep is the documents that we gather from our clients. Once we perform a risk assessment and once we calculate the level of risk of our clients, we need to keep that information in hand, and what our decision was and how our decision was justified. Of course, the first time screening is one part and it's very important. However, we also need to monitor our clients against any changes. For example, the frequency of monitoring our clients, this is really depends on your internal policies. Some examples are, for example, the high-risk clients to be reviewed every 6 months, whereas the low-risk clients to be reviewed on a yearly basis. And as a last step, we have to review our processes regularly because the laws and the regulations, they are changing from day to day, and we have to be in line with the changes of our regulators, with the changes of the local and the international regulators and the inspectors. And in that case, again, what we have thought about and is the challenge of calculating a level of risk of our entities, the importance of having this automated so that we can insert the information that we have collected for our entities, and if there is any system to give us if our client is of high or low risk. And we have made that process, we have automated that process through our risk-based approach tool. Some benefits of that tool is that you cover all the risk factors, such as I will go through the risk factors, such as the type of the client and the delivery channel. Some questions that we have to answer is if our client is a known or an introduced client, have we met our client face-to-face, or do we have any business relationship with that client? The geographical risk, if there is any economic activity and the source of and destination of funds, of course, where those funds of our client they are going, or from where the funds of our clients are coming from, and the nature and the behavior of our clients, the veracity of our KYC documents, if there are any frequent or inexplicable changes in ownership that they refuse to provide us with justifications or further information, if the entity structure changes from time to time or very frequently, the complexity of the services that are provided either to our client or the complexity of the services that are provided from our clients, the level of involvement of cash, if, for example, our clients, they tend to pay their providers through cash, and if the transactions, they involve a high level of and a high value of cash. And the importance of the AML screening, of course, against the adverse media, the sanctions list, the enforcement list, politically exposed persons, wanted individuals, and so on. Then we have our risk-based approaches mentioned before. The benefits of that is that we have an overall level of risk immediately. By inserting the information of our clients, we can immediately have the risk rating. We perform a comprehensive and automated risk assessment of third parties in very simple steps. We can identify the deficiencies in AML policies and procedures that we have internally. We can make more informed decisions based on the risk categorization. We can perform risk parameterization based on sectoral and individual circumstances, and we can develop risk mitigation strategies, including internal controls, so as to lower the risk exposure of our organization. So this is more or less the theoretical part of our risk-based approach tool, and I will show you in practice how to perform a risk assessment in very simple steps. So from here, this is an online tool. Of course, we can provide you with trial access credentials, and you can perform your risk assessments very easily. We have the 6 main steps that we have to complete. Of course, the system supports companies and individuals, and it's very easy. So you can insert the information here that you collect from your clients. I will put some random figures. Then you can have, let me check that. The ID number or the passport number, some internal reference number that we have for internal purposes, the gender, if our entity is linked with any high-risk individual. if our entity is a client holder of a passport under the Citizenship by Investment program, if it's a new client of us or an existing one, have we checked of their passport or the ID and they are valid, yes or no? The type of the client, if the client is a face-to-face or non-face-to-face, or a third-party client, or a client that is just linked with an entity that is a client of us. Then we move to the next step. Here we have the industry sectors. If our individual, in that case, is linked with any of those high-risk industries, such as the gambling, the charities, if it's an owner or a manager of casinos and other gambling companies. If our client has ever filed for bankruptcy, the expected turnover or the current turnover of our client, of course, there are some ranges that we can select, the expected destination of the outgoing payments. Through an interview of our client, we can have that information, we can gather that information. In that case, we can select multiple options. Then we have the expected origin of funds. The country of residence. And the country that our client's passport was issued. We move to the next step. We have seen here that, yes, our client is a PEP. Our client is not relative or close associated to any PEP. He's not involved in any, he's not under any sanction list. He's not involved in any enforcement. There are no adverse media against him. And if the client has ever convicted of a crime offense, if our client has ever been disqualified from acting as a director, and if there is any fine imposed to him by a financial regulator. If the client again is insolvent, and that information, just to mention here that for companies that they are using any screening solution for screening their clients against PEP, sanctions, enforcements, and so on, you can insert the details here, and again, those will be considered on the risk assessment and when calculating the overall risk of the client. This is all about the solution, and from here we can see that our client is of high risk. There is 100% risk level percentage. From here we can see, based on our internal policies, how frequent we want to rescreen that person. For example, as a high-risk client, we want to monitor and screen our client every 3 months. Some comments of our compliance department. And those comments and whatever I insert here, they will be shown on the report. So now we have a detailed report in which my details are shown, the date that I performed that risk assessment, the level of risk. I need to keep monitoring that client every 3 months, my comments, all the information that I have inserted through steps 1 to 6, the results, and this is the overall report that I need to keep on my audit file for regulatory purposes. Of course, you can ask for access on our risk-based approach tool. In case that you would like to assess the tool, please feel free to contact me or send an email to our team, to compliance, or to me directly, and we will provide you with access on our solution. You will be able to perform your risk assessments of your entities, either companies or individuals. And the tool is very simple, as you have seen, and straightforward. And we are here to assist. Of course, the aim is to automate the risk assessment procedure as much as possible and to minimize the human error when calculating such an important thing as the risk scoring of our entities. Other useful information, as mentioned before, that our headquarters are in Nicosia in Cyprus, but we have our subsidiary Isyngimekos in Dubai, in DMCC. Our information, in case that you want to contact us either by phone or by email, please feel free, and we will be happy to assist and to provide our assistance and consultation.